Well, good morning, everybody. Blessings. This is Apostle Crystal. I am here this morning with my sister, Prophet Merlin Mendoza, and we are excited to be here with you this morning. Uh, we are here for the fifth day of the 111 days of kinetic prayer, annexing dark dimensions, and we're excited to be here. Thank you for all those that are coming into the room. Blessings to you. Good morning, Elder Vicky. You guys come on in the room and we're going to get started this morning. We've got to kind of streamline. The first week is a little rocky for me, but I promise you the second week we're going to have our footing because I'm just identifying daily how the Father wants to move. And so I'm hearing a lot of different things at a lot of different parts of the day. And I just have to take the time to put these things in their proper place so I know what He wants me to discuss and how He wants me to discuss that, because we really do want to get into a little bit of engagement in warfare. Now, that doesn't always happen that way. So I want to make that very clear because, again, what's happening in the conversation is kinetic and it is prayer. Prayer is not just, our clapping our hands and our speaking in tongues and us having this dialogue that we've been trained. So it really is a process. It really is a transition because not all of the time in these settings does He want to go there. Now, when you get offline, you may go there, that this may take you to that place. However, we want to just be sensitive to the Holy Spirit. We want to be sensitive to what He desires because He's giving us the heart of the Father. He's given us the Father's heart. And as you're coming in, go ahead and worship. Go ahead and express that worship in the form of your typing in the room. That is letting us know that you're ready to go. That's letting us know that we're all with one accord. And so we're going to go ahead and get underway. We were talking about yesterday the body, and it's an area that I really love to talk about. And so as we're moving into the conversation this morning, we just want to give the Father glory and honor and praise for this day, for this morning that we are here to even hear from His heart and what He desires to say to us. We acknowledge His seat this morning. We acknowledge where He's sitting, and that authority of that seat. And we are thankful this morning that He has given us a seat in heavenly places that is far above the principalities, the powers, and the rulers of darkness, spiritual wickedness in high places that we are annexing territory from daily. If we are sons, this is what we're called to do, to destroy the works of the enemy. And how we're destroying those works is they're being exposed. They're being exposed to us. And so we left off yesterday dealing with Barak and Deborah, and we were speaking on the victory that was coming to Israel via that charge, that judge that knew what Israel should do, and that commander that understood partnership. One of the things that we were discussing was the fact that there's no contending in the body. You'll notice that the title is above body. Well, what is the Father talking about? There's a body that He desires to use in this hour, and that body has to be whole. It has to be whole. It has to be fit for His use. And so one of the things, you guys have just a couple more days, and I pray that you are following protocols that I've taught you before to get yourself ready for this hour of fasting that we're coming into. One of the things that's necessary when it comes to the body is fasting. It's very necessary. It's a thing that a lot of people do not engage in. A lot of people that call themselves believers do not engage in this space. And it's a very necessary space to engage in because it is what keeps our body in the proper alignment that it needs to be in to be able to be operable. Without the fast, and this is just from a natural point of view, it also is the spiritual vehicle by which we are able to stay in alignment with the Father. It makes us very sensitive to His needs. It makes us very sensitive to the desires of His heart. And it also positions us for a greater execution. Fasting is so necessary because a lot of times people don't understand what they have become addicted to. It's easy to be addicted to things, not just food, but it's easy to gain um, an affinity towards things. And there's always something that is attempting to gain our attention. But when we begin to turn ourselves to fasting and prayer, that is the reinforcement of that shield that the Father has around us, of that um, what is the word I'm looking for? That reinforcement that the Father is protecting us, that mechanism by which He's protecting us. One of the things that the hedge is what I was looking for. That's the word I was attempting to reach for. The hedge. It's our responsibility to continue to reinforce the hedge. Yes, the Father does give us that hedge, but the hedge, if we're not doing the things that we should do um, in the relationship, then we can actually weaken that hedge or even cause breaches in that hedge. We know that that happened with Job. And a lot of people, when they're reading Job, they're not seeing it actually for what it is. Job was a righteous man, but even righteous people, if we're not fortifying ourselves continually, we can get in a space. And the space that Job got in was a space of fear because he had children that were not operating as he was operating, and they were just kind of reveling and partying and doing all these things. He got in a space where he began to fear that they might be doing things that would cause the Father to see some things differently. They might be doing some things that would cause a lack of no protection from them. So he is sacrificing and continually sacrificing daily on their behalf, just in case they might be doing something, right? The fast is not the fast. I'm kind of relating that to the fast. A lot of times people are just doing things. It becomes ritual. We've talked a lot about the ritual. It becomes ritualistic instead of relational. And when it becomes ritualistic instead of being relational, then we've stepped into another space. We've stepped into the place of flesh. And so when he is challenged, it is because the Father is wanting to fortify him again. He's wanting to strengthen him. So when we're talking about this buff body that the Father is looking for, I'm looking at Job this morning just for a brief moment, and we're going to carry on. And I'm looking at how strong and how strengthened he was. He was economically sound. He was spiritually sound. And then he gets into a space. And when I look at his family dynamic, it kind of gives me an indication that he may have connected himself in a way that caused this issue. So when we're talking about vitality of the body, it has everything to do with our connections. Whom he was married to may have had a lot to do with the children that he bore. And but for the grace of Yah, many of us have bore children by people that we potentially had no business being with, but by his grace we would all be consumed, right? But I'm looking at his dynamic, and these children are a product of what they've come out of, and now they are functioning in a way that is, in Job's eyes, could be potentially challenging the favor, challenging the hedge that is protecting that family. And so he begins to act out of fear. The Father nominates him for an encounter. He nominates him for the challenge of this adversary. And we know that the word says that there were sons of God that came before the throne, and Satan came also. And in this coming, there's an engagement and conversation regarding Job, and he says, "Have you considered my servant Job?" Most people would be kind of offended by that one. Like, why would the Father even suggest his servant, right? Well, what happens when we are outside of where we need to be operating at? And I believe that we're entering a season, an hour, where the Father perpetually wants us to identify the space that we need to be in order to maintain our strength in Him, to maintain our focus in Him, to maintain our mind as it should be aligned with His mind, even as the Master's mind was aligned with His mind. The word says, let this mind be in you. That was also in the Master. And we know that He understood very clearly that we don't live by what we eat alone. We don't live by what we eat alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of Yah. So when I look at Job's environment, and I see this nomination that is made for him, the Father has every confidence that He will pull through this. He has every confidence in Job because He understands the heart of Job. And so when we're talking about this body, Job is challenged in his body. The Father gives the enemy very explicit instructions. And so I'm often saying this thing, and I want to make it very clear to you this morning. I'm often saying this thing about the Father utilizing darkness. And a lot of people that are religious may not understand that concept, but it's also something that we should know to do. Now, I don't know how far I want to go into this morning, because we want to talk about this buff body. But what I mean by that is the Father made a statement inspired by the one that wrote it. And He said that all things work together for the good of them that love Yah and are be called according to His purpose. What that means is that no matter what challenges you have faced, no matter what situations you have gotten yourself into, no matter what challenges of darkness have you been met with, those challenges, those enemies at some point will work for you. They're going to be utilized to be the blessing that once felt like something else. He's going to utilize that. Even as it was for the children of Israel, often when they were outside of the space that they needed to be in as a body of people, He would allow an enemy to come in. And we saw that in the conversation that we were having about Barak and Deborah yesterday, how the Father allowed this enemy to challenge Israel. And as they were being challenged, He would cause a judge to come up. Now, why I'm going in this direction, thank you, Holy Spirit. Often when we are dealing with the body, He's saying there's no schism in the body. There's no contending in the body. Yet, when we're looking at these different bodies, and I'm saying this intentionally, I'm using this phraseology intentionally. When we're looking at these different bodies, we see schism, though. We see contention. We see battle. We see argument. Why? Because His body, there's no contending. But in other bodies, there may be. One of the things He said to the children of Israel was, when you go into the land, and this is the place that He's taken us into a promised place, but that means that He needs to prepare us to go into that promised place. He said, don't do what they do. Don't serve me like they serve me. So what is all the fasting? What is all the prayer about? What is this 111 days about? It's about going through these effective doors, going through these gates. What happens in these doors? What happens in these gates? These are openings that are giving us access to this authority that the Father has actually called us to, so that we will know what we're supposed to be doing in every season. And these gates are the gates where government, where His authority, His seat of government is operating. And we are those operators in the earth. So this is necessary for so many reasons, because we're supposed to be able to identify some things. We're supposed to be able to judge some things. And often what happens when we are out of alignment with our position, the Father will allow things to come and help us get back into alignment. Of course, most people think those things are the adversary, but the Father is the one that's allowing it to bring us back into proper alignment. Prophet, did you have anything you want to say in this matter before I go into some of the scripture this morning?
No. I'm listening.
Amen. Amen.
Amen.
So we are coming into a place where the Father's requiring so much of us, so much more of us. He's not looking for us to come from the place where of the houses that we came out of. You know, he's often talking about bringing us out of a space. We've been talking about come out of her. He did it with most of his people. You know, they would leave one space to go to another. He told Abraham, you know, to go to a place that I'm going to show you. And it was not a place that he had ever been to. It was a place that he desired his father to go to, but his father stopped in Haran, and that's where he died, right? And so the Father desires us to come out of the nativity of what we're familiar with. And a lot of times that means coming out of the familiarity of our family, coming out of the familiarity of the bloodline, because there's another bloodline that's been offered. And in that bloodline is the strength. And this is another body. You know, a lot of times people are being held back, they're being pushed down because they're in the wrong body, they're connected to the wrong things. So this is causing schism, this is causing division, it's causing an issue in the body, even so, an issue in the blood. And so the Father says, listen, I've allowed my Son to be sacrificed to bring you into a perpetual and eternal bloodline that's going to allow you to do the things that you were born to do. A lot of times when we're dealing with the familial bloodline, that's a place where a lot of times people are hindered because they're trying to keep up with the family way of doing things. They're trying to please the people around them. They want them to be pleased. They want to hear these things where they want to be, what's the word I'm looking for? They want to be accepted. Not only do they want to be accepted, but um, they want to be celebrated, right? And the Father's saying, listen, I want to bring you out of those spaces and I want to bring you into a place where the body, where the family of Yah is in a congregation, where they're connected and they are operating optimally from that place. But that takes some things. It takes some things. It takes for us to understand. We started with Barak and Deborah. It takes us understanding that there is no fight, there's no contending in his body, and that every part has a place. Every part has a place. We don't have to contend for position. Every part has a place. And in every season, there's a necessity of those different parts to do different things. There's an administration of the body. And as long as that body is operably operating and every part is doing its function, then the body is whole. The body is whole. Uh, Deborah says to Barak, they're going up, they have the strategy, but she lets him know this is not a victory that's necessarily going to be gotten at your hands. It's going to be given to the hands of a woman. And they're all okay with that. Nobody's contending with that. Nobody's arguing over that. Nobody's trying to vie for position. So again, the Father allows things to happen so that the body can come back into alignment. And when we identify that there's something going on in the body, then that's when we're able to stop and say, listen, there's something that I need to do about this. A lot of times people are praying and they're like, well, Father, you know, do this and take this away and do all of that. And he's like, listen, I gave you authority in the earth. I gave you dominion and I gave you that body. And so we've got to each individually be aware of our own bodies so that as we are joining together, then the fit supplies something. It supplies something. We were talking about the prosthetic part, and we were talking about those parts that are not operable and that are not naturally occurring in the body. Those things often cause pain. And so as we're moving forward in this season, I believe that the Father's going to begin to expose the parts that don't belong. He's been doing that, but I believe very aggressively he's going to do that because he's rooting out some things so that we can get where we're going. When you look at the children of Israel, they were traveling from one place to the next place. As they were traveling, he was rooting out things. Why? Because things were coming up. And a part of what happens when things come up is that they have to be addressed. You know, we had the sons of Korah, they were contending. We had, you know, Aaron and Miriam, they were contending. And so we had all of these different things. We see the situation that happened right after Balaam was attempting to curse the people, but he could not. He was called to do that, but the Father would not allow him. But he did give to Balak, the king, a way that he could bring Israel into a place of contempt that would put them in a position to be breached. And we saw even with that leader who had the woman, the Midianite, and they were there in the temple, in the doorway of the temple. There's so many things that are happening that cause the body to be, breached. And so now we've got to definitely pay attention to what's going on in the body, what needs to be rooted out, because the Father desires to root it out. And so even in our physical bodies, as we are identifying this time that we're getting ready to go into, it was not unlike the last time we were getting ready to go into the thing. The Father began to reveal some things to us. We've got to prepare our bodies so that we can continually supply for one another what is needful. That means we have to begin to bring ourselves under. We've got to put our bodies under. We've got to bring ourselves into that place. And so as we're coming into that space where next week is coming right up, okay, we're getting ready to cross over into the new week, which is going to happen Sunday. I hope you guys are ready to cross over into that space, because I believe that space is going to really be the space that the Father is utilizing for a different layer of protection. If we're not aware of what his desire is, if we're not able to adhere to that desire, then we're going to be breached. We're going to be compromised. And I'm telling you that this adversary that we're dealing with, he is not for the play right now. He's not for the games. We have to really be intentional about what we're doing and understand that the Father is looking for a body that will contend, that will stand up to this darkness, this present darkness that we are facing. It is unlike anything that we've seen, that we've got a little bit of eyesight on it. The Bible says, as it was in the days of Noah. So if we go and we begin to unfold what happened in the days of Noah, then we can begin to see a similarity of the day that we're in. But when I tell you this time is like no other time that we've ever lived in. I mean, literally, the things that we're looking at right now, we've never seen this before. Not us personally. We may have read of some similar things, but we have not lived through what we're getting ready to live through. And so it's very important that we prepare our bodies for the season that we're going into, and that we're not contending with one another, that we understand that there is no schism in the body. Prophet, anytime you want to come in, you just let me know. Just let me know in the chat. There's no schism in the body. And so we've got to be very aware of what the Father is calling for, what he's calling us to, and move in that. I want to go here really quickly. We've been talking about, it's the 5th day, so I want to go here really quickly because I want you to understand where we are as far as that is concerned. This is the letter Hey in the Hebrew, and it describes, the pictograph describes the breath, it describes air, it describes spirit. And this is what we must be led by, as we are moving into this new position, as we are continuously annexing dark dimensions. We have to understand that it's by the Spirit of Yah that we're able to do this. Everything that we're able to do in this season is by his Spirit. It's not of our own ability. It's by his Spirit. One of the things that, let me read this to you guys. I want to read this to you. We talked about the body not competing, but we want to deal kind of a little bit with the infirmity of the body, because that infirmity causes the body not to optimally work. Understanding that the body never competes, but it does trust, or it does run to the aid, it does run to the aid of the other parts. And I believe that this is another area that the Father's really dealing with us in. This is why we need his breath. This is why we need his air. This is why we need his Spirit, so that we'll know how to do what he's calling us to do, so that we'll operate in grace. That's another definition of this 5. It's a grace. It means his ability, God ability. Understand, when we're going into this place of fasting in this season, it's not on your own ability. So what he's calling you to do, I told you at bare minimum, you should be, dealing, eating at that 11 o'clock hour, and no more than 2 or 3 hour window and then going right back in. That's at minimum. That's just so that we're all in a space of fasting. All of us are not doing that. Some of us are going further than that. But I want you to be able to identify with this thing, because you have to understand that there is a support that is there for you. The Father is there for you to lean into Him. That is the bread. That is the food. The children of Israel didn't understand that kind of thing. He was bringing them out of the captivity to be able to worship Him. And I believe that fasting is a place that causes us to worship in a different way. It causes our spirits to operate differently, because we are not reliant on the things that are natural. We're now reliant on the things that are spiritual. And so this is an important part of the year. It's an important part of our daily lives. We've got to cross over into this space. And it's an unfamiliar space. It is a very unfamiliar space. Some of the things that He's asking us to do, the ways that He's asking us to do it, are very unfamiliar, but we've got to be reliant. We've got to be we've got to be okay with just relying on Him. That's the thing that the children of Israel weren't able to do. And for this cause, that first batch didn't make it into the promise. They were not able to do it. They were complaining about, you brought us out here to kill us. They were talking about, I'm thirsty. You know what I'm saying? They had so many different isms and schisms about themselves that it was really amazing. But when you look at them, you have to also identify where you are. Can you see where you are based on, because a lot of people look at the children of Israel and they were very upset. I looked at them when I was growing up and reading the word, and I was wondering, like, why are they so off? Like, what's going on with the children of Israel? And I really thought that they were crazy. But as you're maturing and you're looking at the word from a spiritual place and not from a fleshly place, you might be able to see yourself in some of that. And the reason why it's there is so that you can identify what to do and what not to do. So when we're talking about this buff body, let's go there for a moment. It's important that we understand when we're going through a process physically of creating a body, or creating, what our bodies should look like. That's a real part. It's a real place. Then there are disciplines that are required, right? There are disciplines that are required. That body has to undergo some things. And the only way that you're going to be able to undergo those things physically is that you are mentally ready to go into those spaces, that you have a mental capacity and you have a discipline to go into those spaces. You have to make up in your mind that this is what I want to do. A lot of times what happens with people is we identify, because we're dealing with flesh more than we're dealing with spirit. We've learned how to operate flesh, but the Father desires us to exercise our spirits. There's a necessity to exercise the senses of the spirit, the spiritual senses. And we're exercising flesh all of the time. And so what happens is we don't recognize that when we're stepping into a space, the Father's called us there. When we're stepping into that space, then if we're not stepping into that space in a discipline, from a discipline perspective, we're hearing these voices, and these voices are leading us back to the space that we came out of. It's the same thing that happened with the children of Israel. They're leaving that space, but they haven't internally, the space is still there. And so what He's doing is He's taking them on a journey to break that thing that's in them. He took them out of the space, but what was in them was still there. So He desires to break whatever is a hindering place, whatever is stopping us, whatever is blocking us. And we know that things like witchcraft and all that stuff are real, but guess what? The curse causeless doesn't come. But those are places that we have to realize in order to know there's a journey that I have to go on to break these things. We were talking about this the other day, and understanding that there are ways and means that the Father's given us to be able to come out of a space. A lot of times we got all of these, different things that are being done in the industrial complex, the religious industrial complex, and people then are making themselves some great one by saying you need to come over here, you need to go over there in order for you to have this kind of deliverance. And the truth of the matter is that when we realize what the Father's desire is, then we just submit to it as sons. I'm not, if somebody has an issue that is way beyond them, we know that takes something. That takes the arrival of something bigger than them. So we can look at the man that was in the tombs, and we can see that he was undergoing some things that were beyond him at that point. It took somebody, it took a master, somebody higher than him to bring that thing, you know, out of him, to take that, to make that thing go, right? But I'm talking about as believers, the daily walk should be us recognizing the space that we're in, discerning the space that we're in, and if there is anything that is coming up, because things are always going to come up, you know, things are going to come up, and as the Holy Spirit is pointing at those things, it's meant for us to deal with what He's pointing at. And if we don't deal with the thing that He's pointing at, then that is an area where the adversary begins to set up shop. Says, okay, the thing has been brought to their attention. They're not dealing with that. Like we talked the other day about minding or being mindful of the things that we're listening to, guarding the gates. You know, we talked about specifically, I wanted to say it this way again, um, knowing those that are laboring. So when you're listening to something, you got to know, begin to know that thing by the Spirit. What's laboring? A lot of people are really not aware that a lot of the things that they love to listen to, that they like to look at, all of these different things are very dangerous, because if you haven't identified the spirit of the thing that you're looking at or that you're listening to, then you're participating, right? You're participating in this thing. Now, once you become a participant, then now you're going to be dealing with some other things, because now you're going to be hearing all of these other things when it's time to fast, when it's time to pray, when it's time to bring your body under, as Paul would say, I bring my body under. I crucify my body daily. I'm sacrificing daily. Then you're going to hear other voices that are saying, you know what? We can start tomorrow. I want to talk about that for a hot second, because a lot of times we're operating in places that we say we don't want to be. We want to deal with the spirit of delay. We want to deal with the spirit that is detaining us, or all of these other things. But the first thing that comes out of our mouth when it's time to fast, or when it's time to really go into a space that the Father's calling us to, is, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it Monday. I'll do it Sunday. I was talking to somebody I love yesterday, and I was saying, do it today. Like, don't put delay in this thing, because your complaint is about the delay. So why participate with delay when you've been given authority to operate? So go operate, you know, go do that. And so this is the body that He's looking for, is the body that understands, listen, I can't delay this thing any longer. I can't put it off any longer. I need to go and operate as I was created to operate. And I'm not going to put anything else on the back burner. You know, a lot of us have put some things on the back burner. Some of you have said, you know, I'm going to go into a fast, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. And we do have a standing thing that we were doing weekly. But I'm telling you, the Father is amping that up. He's taking us to another space. And for what needs to be done in us to prepare us for what is coming, we're going to have to put ourselves in a space of humility that we've never identified with before. Prophet?
And you're correct. This is a time like never before. And, we have to ask ourselves, even if God didn't give us all the information, are we willing to just trust Him and move when He say move? Because there's some things He's not going to share with us.
Mm-hmm.
There's some things He's not going to say. You have to truly be in a place where you are hearing Him clearly and being obedient.
Absolutely.
It's truly, truly, truly a different time. And she said fasting is a huge, huge key. That flesh, which have a voice, wants to speak and want to be heard,
Hmm.
wants to give orders, want to keep you in a place. But with the pressures that is going to come and the things that is here, you're gonna truly, truly need for your flesh to be out the way.
That's a fact.
Yeah,
We gotta move it. We've got to move it. He's not gonna move it. It's something
we
that
have to.
we have to do.
Yeah,
And even in this place of what He's calling kinetic prayer, it's a more mature place that says, listen, we're not giving Him orders. You know, have you noticed throughout the years that of your life that you find that people are, they're calling prayer, what they're calling prayer is giving the Father orders.
Mhm.
You know, what I need you to do, you know. Um,
Yeah.
and that's not the place. That's not really the place of prayer. That's a place of orders, but it's not a place of prayer. And it's definitely not the space for a matured son, because he's given us authority in the earth. And so he's expecting us to utilize
Exactly.
our authority, to operate in our authority. You know,
Hmm.
what does that breath look like? You know, how should we be utilizing this pneuma? How should we be utilizing this power? You know, and the master would often say, "I have bread that you don't know of." You know, are you hungry, master? No, I'm good. And I guess they wondering like, well, we are. We're hungry. Like, yeah, I know you are, but I'm not. I have a different kind of bread. We would see him often going off to be with his father. Yes, he would do the work, but he would often go off. That doesn't mean he went off permanently. He went off to go and be restored, to be refreshed, you know,
Yes.
to get what he needed. And it wasn't
Yes.
the same as what they needed, because they were operating they were operating from flesh. He was training them to operate spiritually,
Hmm.
so that when he left, they would understand it. They really didn't understand it until he left. They really didn't understand it until he left. And so, in that place when he left, you know how sometimes you'll hear something, you'll understand. And you mentioned this as I was saying that uh, he doesn't give us all the details all the time. But when you're operating from a flesh place, you want all the details all the time. And if you don't get the details, you don't start moving. I'm telling you that you begin to move in the way that you know to move. If it's prayer, if it's fasting, he said that the steps of a good man are ordered. But listen to what he said, the steps, that means you have to be doing something in order to get direction. In order for you to get to a place of direction or ordered steps, you have to be moving. That means you have to trust. That means there has to be a certain level of trust in you concerning him. Israel didn't have that trust like that. They were always wanting something, to the point that he gave it to them. So understand the time that we're in, he's desiring the humility. He's desiring that place of bringing ourselves under, right? Going into those spaces where we are saying, you know what, like Daniel, I need to identify and I need to understand what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing. So I'm going to put all of that other stuff at rest. That stuff is going to be at rest, and I'm going to stay in a place until I find what he's saying, until I identify, till I hear the mystery unlocked, until I see it unlocked. I'm going to stay right here. Most people don't want to do that. But this is absolutely the place that he's calling us to. So you're going to have those that are willing to do that, and then you're going to have those that are going to be beholden to their flesh, and they're going to be sitting, and they're going to be waiting, and they're going to, all of these things that the industrial complex tries to teach us. Wait on the Lord. Well, what does that mean? He's been bringing this eagle up to me, and some things he's asked me to do in this season is so funny. But when you talk about wait on the Lord, and you shall renew your strength, you'll mount up on wings like eagles. Well, guess what? If you don't, first of all, study what eagles do. See, when people read the Bible, they just read the Bible says. They read those specific verses, but they don't
Mm.
understand that they need to study what's around that. If you read Mountain Up on Wings Like Eagles, you need to go find out how the eagle does. What's his culture? What's his lifestyle? How does he do what he does? The eagle literally goes through a stage called molting. This is the fasted stage, right? Goes through a stage called molting. You know what he does? As strong and as amazing as that eagle is, he understands when he begins to get too heavy in his wings, it's time to pluck them. Because too much heaviness in the wings won't allow him to fly optimally. He goes to that mountain, that very high place that he comes from, because he sits in the high place, right? Goes to that high place and he plucks all of his feathers from his body and he breaks his beak. Now, you do know that means he can't leave that mountain, and it also means he can't eat anything. He plucks all of his feathers and he breaks his beak. And then he waits. Then he waits in that high place till all his feathers grow back and his beak grows back. And then he's stronger than ever. This is the space that the Father is calling us to, where we understand we're too heavy for the task. We're too heavy. What we want to do, how we want to move, all of that's too heavy for what he's calling us to. It's too heavy. There's a verse of scripture in 1 Corinthians chapter 9 that talks about the race. But I want to speak specifically to the verse that says, only one can receive the prize. He says, so run that you may win. Guess what? You cannot win a race unless you've been trained for it. You don't just go out and run. I've done this before. He called me one season. He said, I want you to go run. I want you to start running. And I just wanted to obey him, right? So from a natural perspective, I just got up, put on my gear, went outside and started running. I was exhausted. I was like, oh my gosh. Like, what? Is this what he said? Yep. Now, since you started, he said, that's a good thing. Now, I want you to go step into that library over there, because I went to a track and there was a library right there. So I want you to step into that library and I want you to go get a book on running. And I want you to read it. And so I went in, I got the book, it was an amazing book. I really need to find it again. I read the whole book. And, that evening I got up the next day and I went back out. And I began to exercise the thing that he taught to me about. He said, run. He gave me that instruction, but I needed to go get the information to know how to do that.
How to run.
So I had to go get a book. Now he gave me this was a spiritual conversation. It wasn't just run in the spirit. No, he said, run. Because it came from him, this was not only a natural thing, but it was a spiritual thing, because there was a lot of spiritual significance in what he was giving me. But what he was showing me with this natural thing was how to run the race. Just because I told you to do it doesn't mean you know how to do it. It means that you need to identify, yes, I told you that, but now you need to go and learn of me. Learn what I'm saying. Get the keys so that you'll be able to unlock what I'm calling you to. This is this body. What does it take? Like when we're dealing with from the natural place, how do you get above body? You got to eat the right things. We're talking about consumption now, right? And we're talking about appetite. We're dealing with appetite. And that's the thing that's hurting most people, is their appetite. You're more beholden to your appetite than what the Father is calling you to. You got to change your appetite. And guess what? Bitters change appetites. I'm giving you natural and spiritual things at the same time. Bitters change your appetite. Bitters make you better as well. But bitters will change your appetite. So maybe sour sop and different things, Shilajit. I'm giving you some keys, right? Different things that are bitters. Apple cider vinegar is a bitter. Got to know how to take it, though. You don't just drink it straight. You got to put it in something. You got to drink it through a straw, because you don't want to drink it straight, because it'll mess your teeth up over time. Lemon as well. Lemon will mess your teeth up over time if you're just, constantly putting it to your enamel, right? But you got to know how to do these things. Yes is what he's asking for. Blessings, Prophet Joanne. Yes is what he's asking for. But how do I do that? And that's where the Spirit of Yah comes in at. I need to identify by his Spirit what I'm supposed to be doing. It's not just a natural occurrence. I need spiritual intel and I need backup to do the thing that I'm being called to do. Prophet?
It is. It is so. It is. What God is calling us to in this season, it's going to blow many people's mind. But we have to be in position to receive it. And yes, we are being processed. There is things that we have picked up along the way on
Yes.
this journey that can't go where He is leading us.
Yeah.
Can't.
Mm.
Mindset, ways, habits. And these are things that He already spoke about. These are things that He told you about. And many people didn't put it down.
They did.
They didn't relinquish it. They just kept taking it from season to season.
Mm.
But it is not acceptable in this where He is taking you. You cannot enter in with it.
Mm.
He have given instructions, let it go, leave it. It cannot go with you. This is no longer acceptable because of where He is taking you and what is coming.
Mm-hmm.
But many people are still carrying it, and you can't. Access won't be granted to you if you don't put it down. But remember, these are things that He spoke about. It's nothing new.
It's
It's
not.
just many haven't put it down. They haven't laid it down. They haven't given it up. They haven't asked Him. They haven't asked for help on how to deal with it.
There you go.
It just continue going from place to place. And
Mm.
now to enter into the promise, it cannot go. It is not accepted in this place. It's a hindrance to this place.
Mm-hmm.
It's a blockage.
Mm-hmm.
And and you're right, it's a heaviness because this is a place of renewal, restoration, rebuilding. It's the new,
It
the
is.
old, and you talked about the eagle, the old thing, the plucking out of off of the old things is for a renewed, a replenished.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
different. It's not the same
Mm-mm.
from the position. If you look at the position that the eagle is in, when you were speaking, I saw uh, Jesus as He went to the Mount of Configuration
Yes.
because of what He was about to deal with. Um, was so different. It was new. It's not familiar. He had to go to be replenished, but
Yes.
to get to the place, he couldn't take everything or everyone with him. He
No.
took particular things. So we are, many of us are still trying to take the old to this new place, and it
Mm-mm.
cannot go.
Go.
It's too heavy. It's weighing us down. It's keeping our feet in a place where it's not moving. Even though God, we're saying, Lord, Father, help me. But God said, I already shifted you.
Yes.
Let it go
Yes.
to get to where I want you to get to understand what I want you to understand, to flow as I want you to flow,
Yes.
to rise up as I want you to.
Yes.
So
That's so funny.
in this place of fast, it really bring you uh closer to know and to understand. Okay,
Yes.
Father, you said let it go. I'm letting it go, to not allow your flesh to supersede what the Father is saying to you.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Flesh is a nasty thing.
It's a nasty thing.
It is.
Yeah.
It will keep you hindered, delayed, blocked in the same square box. And you wonder why you're in this place, but you have allowed your flesh to have the
Preeminence.
ability to decide
Mm-hmm.
what you do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you can't. You absolutely cannot. I mean, this place, it may be unfamiliar, but it's where you ought to be.
It really is the
Bring
place
your
that you want to
flesh
be.
under subjection.
Yes.
You
It
have
really is
to.
the place. It's the place to be.
Yeah.
It's a place that we're asked. It's funny that we know to ask for it.
Mhm.
Think about this for a minute. We know that where we are is not the place, right?
Mhm.
So, like when the children of Israel cried out, they knew that wasn't the place for them. They understood, things are passed down. They didn't have what we have now, a whole Bible and all that. But somebody remembered the conversation,
Mhm.
right? And in the remembrance of that conversation, somebody began to cry out because they were like, this is not it. This is not my life. This is not how my life is supposed to look. There,
Exactly.
there are greater promises. They knew to cry out, right? But somehow when the deliverer came, they were kind of contending with him for a little bit because when he came and he began to have conversation with the thing that was bringing them into captivity, that had brought them into captivity, that the captor was pissed off
Mhm.
and things began to be harder.
Mhm.
Things got harder, right? Because now freedom is speaking to captivity.
That's right.
So it seemed harder. And they said, why didn't you just leave us alone? Like, why are you doing this? You know,
Mhm.
they're arguing with deliverance. That's it.
Mhm.
They are arguing with deliverance. But what happens is when those plagues begin to break out, and I think we talked about this the other day, when those plagues begin to break out, it was a little
Yeah.
different, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was hitting a little different. What I believe the Father has been preparing us for is the plagues because they are coming
Yeah.
in rapid succession. It's not going to be like the scamdemic that we just experienced a couple of years
No.
ago. It's
It,
not going to be that. It's going to be that plus some.
yeah. And and you know, a word. My daughter, she was praying yesterday, and the Lord said, "All will stand and see His power in this
Yes,
earth, and
yes.
and they're gonna know that it was Him, and they're gonna know why." And many would like to pray it away, but
Hmm.
they can't
Not
pray
going to
this
happen.
away.
Mm-mm.
No, it's not happening. You know, again, the church mentality. Oh, we have the ability to pray, but praying against the hand of God,
That's dangerous.
there's certain things that must take place, that have to. So this is why, again, the preparation to prepare you to be able to deal with what is coming, to be able to stand in the midst of it. Because if you're not prepared for a situation, you're going to be a mess in the situation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is not that first situation. It's still about
No.
crowns, though. You know,
Yeah.
it's still a battle over crowns. What crown?
Hmm.
Our crown and this enemy's crown.
That's right.
And that's still what the battle is over. It's still a battle of seeds. His
Hmm.
seed in us. You know,
The seed, the seed of the woman and the seed of the
that's it.
serpent.
The serpent.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's still a battle of seeds. But every
Hmm.
seed requires the right environment. And I'm telling you that
To
fasting is the
grow.
right
Yeah.
environment. You're talking about growth. You're talking about strength. You're talking about all of those
Hmm.
things. Then a thing has to be in the right environment.
The right soil.
That's it. That's the environment. The soil, but the seed is
Hmm.
sealed for a reason.
Yeah.
It's sealed until it's time for it to
Hmm.
be germinated. So that that thing that has all of the intel, all of the information in it, all of the potential in it, has a covering until it's time for it to become.
Mm.
It has a
Set
covering.
time.
Yeah.
Set time. Set
Set
time.
time. You know what? I
Set
want to say
time.
this too, because some of you I have been in this space. I want to deal with this real quick because the enemy has attempted to taunt many of you over this timing thing, right? The Father is has asked something of us, and then we're frustrated because we feel like we haven't done it yet, or we haven't. If you're like me, you started. You've got a lot of things that have already been started, and some of them are almost finished. But I want to say this for you: He does have a set time, and if you are a son of Yah, if you are a child that is beholden to your Father, none of us are going to purposefully be in disobedience. He's not going to allow that. Not if your heart is towards him. He's not going to allow that. I love this, what you said, Prophetess Joanne. It wasn't until the sixth plague. Absolutely. Then they want to go in like, oh, okay, we get it. Right. But at the end of
Mm.
the day, if your heart is towards him, he's not going to allow you to stay in disobedience. He's going to allow the Holy Spirit to continue to, you know, cultivate and talk to you about things, bring things to your attention. And many of us have been given instructions and we felt like in a season I missed the moment or I didn't finish but I'm talking about sons right now. I'm not talking about people that heard something and just refused to do it. Okay? There is a set time.
Mm-hmm.
And so you began the journey, you started some things, some of the things you didn't finish. I'm not making an excuse for you. I'm telling you what it is. And the enemy came to try to taunt you with the fact that something was incomplete and the Father did not tell you yet, release it.
Mm. Mm.
So some of us have been living in that space and wondering if we were missing something or if we were not following through. And if we're not careful and we're looking at people around us that are just doing, right? There's a
Yep.
season for the doings. It's the same thing that we were talking about, Prophetess, the other day when I was talking about this thing that was communicated many, many years ago. The Father had been
Mm-hmm.
talking about the sound for a very long time. And then
Mm-hmm.
there are things that are on the general broadcast system, right? Even darkness can identify with this thing.
Mm-hmm.
They can hear it, they can see it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking about this sound, and then people started picking this thing up and started talking about, they started doing records called the sound, and they started creating music around this sound, but it wasn't the time
No.
because people don't understand prophecy.
Mm.
And we don't
Mm.
understand prophecy because the industrial complex of religion and church that we've been brought up in is trying to make prophecy look like a word of wisdom or a word of knowledge. Those things are what align us to fulfill the prophetic word. Those are like our
Right.
signposts.
That's right.
The,
You
the,
know.
the, the word of wisdom, word of knowledge, those are signposts. That's not the prophecy. Those are
Mm.
things that people are inspired to give us, if they're authentic, that align us with the path to get to the promise.
Yeah. You know.
Go ahead.
And you're talking about set time again. Exactly 2.5 weeks ago. I was just laying here and worshiping, and I saw a timer, like if you're baking a chicken or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and you set a timer. And God said, stick your hand in there. And I stuck my hand. I saw the numbers on the timer, and I just turned it all the way to the beginning. And He said, set time. So, and you're right, because a lot of times we wonder, did I miss it?
Yeah.
God, you did say this.
Yes.
Why? I haven't I, and there were times I asked Him that question, have I missed it? Where have I erred? Where have I gone
Yes.
wrong?
Yes.
And what He said to me, with just by hearing Him and watching. So, it was like a double. He gave it. Now look, the time have been set. So,
Yes.
that time is appointed, and all the ways the enemy came and would try to shift me in a place I couldn't
Hmm.
shift. I kept coming right back to this one place that He
Right back
had
to
me
the
in.
top. Yeah.
And everybody was saying, something is wrong with you.
Hmm. Hmm.
Something is wrong with you. You're supposed to be doing all of this. But I'm
Yes.
saying, Lord, when you give us a prophetic word, you process us
Yes.
to be able to execute it, to walk in it, to steward it right, and to
Mm.
see it come forth. And well, everybody is saying that something is wrong with me. Lord, what happened? And I
Hmm.
would question him. And
Hmm.
then he would say, you just continue walking.
Yes.
And but until that clock, that incident with the timer, that is when I truly understood and know that I don't care. I'm not shifting. God said, keep on this path and continue. Though
Yes.
the place be unfamiliar to you,
Yes.
just remember I am processing you to this point. There is things that I'm shifting and I'm still navigating, but you continue on the path.
Yes.
But a lot have shifted off the path because of frustration, because of them not understanding the time frame.
Mm.
So, the enemy would come if you don't understand, the time that you ought to make a decision or things are supposed to be done. You
Hmm.
would think you're just walking this way and nothing is happening. But so much is taking place within you.
Hmm.
If you look back maybe 5 months, you're not the same person. God said
Hmm.
we are daily evolving into whom He created us to be. You talk
Yes.
about the breath. The breath represents His DNA, being
Yes.
able to function how He wants us to function,
That's it.
not according to how the church, which have
Mm.
been influenced by the world, is
Mm.
wanting us to shift, because they are walking not even by faith but by sight, because they haven't seen it yet. they they,
Mm.
they get discouraged and want you to come off of the path that God has set for you.
Yes. That's absolutely right. And I really wanted to address that because a lot of people have felt that, you know, and really got in a place of frustration. And it's a device that the enemy uses. See, we often think that the device is, we kind of think we understand what the devices are, right? And the truth of the matter is, he will utilize the he'll identify some things based on what we are moving in, you know. And as we're moving in that thing, he's saying, okay, I don't know all of the directions that are supposed to be taken here, but I just kind of want to move you off the path. So let me say this: you're not finished with that. You started it, but you won't finish. He'll say things like you won't finish, like you don't. I've heard this a lot. I've heard this a lot. The spirit of a finisher. I've heard this a lot. And so what happens is he will try to get you in this space where he's like, you're not finishing. That's not the spirit of a finisher. But the Father does have a time for things. He absolutely has a time for things. But if we're not in his presence like we should be, right? If we're identifying, when I say in his presence like we should be, I mean, when we're in that presence, the door should be closed. The door should be closed. We shouldn't be trying to view what everybody else is doing. We shouldn't be viewing what everybody else is saying. And if you're like me or like Prophet Marilyn, you really, that's not the biggest thing for you. But it's an area where the enemy can attempt because you're like, I feel like I should be further. We talked about this the other day when I was saying that somebody I love was trying to get me to start a church. I was in my early 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because the adversary recognized what was on me, right? So when I say he doesn't know all of the logistics of things, but he can kind of gauge based on, some movement. Oh, okay. All right. Well, let's get them in there quicker. Let's expedite this process. Well, you know what an expedite,
Prematurely.
that's right, prematurely. The Father knows what the timing is of the thing. So when I say I've got several things that are almost finished, he's like they're almost finished because it wasn't ready. Okay? But on my timing, you push that thing out just like this, back to back. You'll push it out. You know, there is a false contraction when a woman is having children, the Braxton Hicks, right? We know of that.
Mm.
It feels like it's time to push, but it's not yet, you know, not yet. Those are the false contractions. But when the real ones come, that means your water's going to break. There's dilation. There's all of that. And you can't stop that process. It cannot be stopped. You know, even if you went and sat in a corner somewhere, that baby's coming out. You know, we know that we think, you know, you got to go to the hospital to have a baby. No, when that baby is ready to come out,
Waits for no one.
it's not going to wait for you. You don't have to be in the stirrup
No.
position. Matter of fact, if you're
Mhm.
squatting somewhere, that's the best position. Okay. So in that squatted position that you're in over there hiding in the corner, that thing's coming out. That baby's coming forth. It's not going to delay. When it's time, it's not going to delay.
Mm.
Mm-mm. It's going to come forth. And so I'm praying this morning that those of you who understand what the Father is desiring to do in this season, that you align yourself with his desire. And as you align yourself with his desire, that you put off the things that have attempted to try to weigh you down. These ideas, these concepts of things, you know, because you're feeling like, oh, I need to do this, I need to do that. Okay, is it time? Are you prepared? Are you ready? Just like that running, right? I
Mhm.
obeyed. I got out there and I was like, you can't be telling me to do this because what? I'm not even around the track the first time. And I'm exhausted. I'm winded. He's like, go get a book. Go read. It's things we need to know. It's things that we need to know. And we're going to only come to that place if we step out into the space that he's calling us into. So we've started some things because we stepped out into that space that he's calling us into. And it's powerful. It's dynamic. You know, as it is, we're looking at it and we're like, wow, like when is this going to be released? You know, when am I going to? And he's saying, just settle down. That's it. Settle down. Just settle down. Settle down and hear my voice. Because we're entering into a season of release. And it's going to be so powerful. You know why it's going to be powerful? Because it's been strengthened for the race. It's been prepared for this race. It understands all of the breathing techniques. You know, when you're running, you got to understand breathing techniques and pace and how your hands should be held and all, you know, form is so important when you're working out, particularly. You know, it's not even the amount of reps that you're doing when you're lifting weights. It's the form that you have when you're doing it.
Mhm.
So you could do 100, 100 reps, but if your form was wrong, you could hurt yourself. You're just exhausted. But if you did 15 in the right form, that's more impactful. And I believe that the place the Father's taking us to in this hour is more of the place of impact.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all about impact right now. It's all about the impact, the outcome for his glory. He doesn't want to
Mm.
just send us out there and we don't have what we need to finish it. So you count up the cost. And a lot of times we don't count up the cost. I've read some things, sister, in the last couple of years, just supporting people and doing other things, and I've read some things and I'm like, they put this out. But for the sake of looking like I'm doing something, right?
Mm.
for the sake of having a bunch of things that I'm saying. This is, but I'm reading and I'm like, Father, like I'm scratching my head. And it's just for show. Some things are just for show. That's just what they are. You have anything you want to say before we close? Because we're about to close out.
No.
We thank God for you guys this morning. I pray that you got something out of it. It was a journey for me this morning. I'm like, Father, where are we going with this? What are you getting at? But that's a part of this,
A whole lot was done in this hour. A whole lot shifted. It's
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. We got to be willing to even step out into that space and just do whatever he's saying do. Whether you know what he's doing or not, just step out into it. And that's the place that he's honoring. Because you realize it's not you. It's not you. It has nothing to do with just you. Absolutely. I love you guys. We'll see you tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. Until then, peace to your house. The body's not a me thing. It's a we thing. Blessings. Love you, Prophet.
Blessings.